Today I'm going to show you how we make this really crazy looking block and turn it into two beautiful flying geese units. So stick around. Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Patty. I go by Pattymac Makes everywhere online. Today I want to share with you how I've been making my flying geese units, and on the cutting mat you'll see I've got one all prepped and ready to go. And if you haven't made these, let me just show you a couple of things. You're going to want two colors of fabric, and you want something that's going to give you a pretty good contrast. In this example, I decided to go with complementary colors, so the blue and the gold will play well off each other and you'll get a very distinct shape. You want to make sure that you retain that shape. In this unit you have the goose. This is your goose, and this is your sky. Something that will make your life about, 100% easier, especially when you start with these, is to work with non-directional prints. So if you work with a directional print, you're going to wind up getting things going in all different directions. And to start with, just try to stick to a non-directional print. As you get better at making them, as you get more advanced, there are different cutting techniques you'll want to follow to get everything to line up properly. Karen on Just Get It Done Quilts has like a master class on how to do this. So if you're at the stage where you're more advanced, you might want to check that out. I'll link to that in the description below. So on the unit, we want to have a couple of specific things going on. We want to make sure that we have our 1/4 inch seam allowance here, and that's so when we sew units together, the goose keeps the point. And then we want to make sure that where these two fabrics join, where they meet, that they come together in a point on either end. So we have several things that we need to be mindful of when we're making these. So the 1/4 inch seam here, and then we want to make sure that that seam is right through the center of the corner. There are many ways to make these. There's all kinds of techniques going around, and I found them to be a little bit difficult. I was having trouble getting my units to the correct size. I was finding it difficult to have that 1/4 inch seam allowance, just a lot of things. It looks like a very simple unit, and it is, but it isn't. So let me show you how I'm doing them, and maybe it will help you too. So I've been working with the Eleanor Burns method of making flying geese, and it's really interesting, and it's what I'm going to show you today. It lets you basically oversize your units and then trim them back so you have them just where they need to be. And I like to do it that way. I know it uses a little more fabric, but if I can oversize a unit and then trim it down to the exact size, I'm always happier with my results. So the way I'm going to show you, I do use her specific ruler. It's called a Quilt in a Day ruler, and this is the small flying geese. I have added painter's tape. It kind of helps me to match the seam, and it just helps me to line it up a little bit better. On this particular ruler, it will let you cut both the large and the small. But today we're going to do what she's calling the large, which is the 3x6. Inside of the paper that comes with it, she'll give you all of the instructions. So, if you want to try this method, but you get stuck or you can't remember something, she does have a written tutorial in there to help. But today I'm going to show you visually how we're going to do this. To start, you're going to want, as I said earlier, to have two fabrics. And so, just to keep it easier, I've picked this blue for the sky and the gold for the goose. And we're going to have them in two different sizes, and I know that looks really crazy. You're just going to have to trust the plan. That's all I can tell you. So for this one, and I'm looking at the notes to make sure that I don't tell you wrong. Okay, you're going to cut your large piece as a 9-inch square. You're going to cut the smaller piece as a 7.5-inch square. And we're going to start by, you can fold them to get your center lines, just so you make sure you line them up correctly. I don't flip out over this part because they're well oversized, so you have some wiggle room. Okay, so we've marked the diagonal, and I'll just tell you, this is a lot like making half square triangles. Okay, and what you're going to do is put that on there. So you put the small one on top of the big one, and you want to just, get it as much lined up in the middle as possible. You want an equal distance around. Again, we're not freaking out over this. Okay, now that we have it lined up, we want to secure the fabric, and I wind up doing it this way. I just pin all 4 corners because I don't want it to move. Okay, so that's nice and secure. Then I'm going to come in with my Omni Grid, which I love this little ruler, and I'm going to mark my lines. And I'm marking my sewing lines. A lot of people will just mark the line down the center to indicate their the center line, and then they just sew on the 1/4 inch off of each. I like to actually draw the sewing line itself. And I'm using one of these erasable markers. I use these in embroidery, so they get some use. I'm just going to sketch that end on. Okay, so I'm going to take this to the machine, and I'm going to sew on either side, and then I'm going to come back and I'll talk to you about what we'll do next. We've got our lines sewn, so I'm just going to remove the pins. Everything is secured. And you can see it's a little bit puckery. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually press this flat, so this will serve as our first press to set the stitches. I'm going to do that before I even cut. So I'll be right back. Okay, I've got my stitches set. Now I'm going to cut. This is just like making half square triangles. So we have our 2 pieces cut, and it looks kind of crazy, right? So here's what we've got, and what we want to do is we want to press it so that it goes to the larger side. So we're going to press it that way. So you want to press to the sky. Just like that. Okay, I'm going to set it with the iron, and I'll be right back. Once you've given it a good press, I mean, it really does lay nice and flat. So I've pressed everything to the sky. And then you've got these 2 really weird half square triangles. So here's what we're going to do next. We're going to take one, and that'll just be the bottom piece. And then we're going to put them right sides facing. And what we're going to do is take the yellow, which is the goose, and we're going to put it up here, and we're going to put the blue or the sky at this end. And we want to line up all of our edges. Okay. So what I've done is I've lined up all the way around. So you can see how all of my edges are together. And it looks really weird. I'm not going to lie. You're going to feel like you're doing something wrong. And I'm going to secure. I do a lot of securing because this is a biasy piece. It wants to move around. So I make sure that I secure it really well. I want to show you what we're going to look at that's really strange. So usually, when we're quilting, we want all of our seams to nest and to line up. But you're going to say, well, wait a minute, these 2 are not together. And then if you peel this back, you'll see they don't line up. And you're going to be like, I am doing something wrong. And believe me, I've made this mistake. No, this is correct. You don't want them to line up. You want there to be a space. You can sort of see, it's almost like a little goose right there. But anyway, you just want them to be offset. And we're going to pin again. Just because I don't want anything to move. For the next step, we're going to mark sewing lines, and this time we're going to sew perpendicular to the seam. So this is really similar to how I made all of those envelope blocks in that last big quilt that I sewed. Okay. And I'm just marking the lines that I want to sew on. Okay. Turn it. A lot of people will just mark the diagonal and then sew their 1/4 inch using the foot. I like to have the line to physically sew on. We all have our own preferred ways of working, and that's one of the great things about quilting is you can decide what works for you. So just to check in, we've got all of our edges secured. We are sewing perpendicular to the seam, and nothing lines up. Okay, we're ready to go. All right, let's sew it. I'm just going to sew it off camera and come back and show it to you. All right, I've sewn my 2 lines. You can see they're on right on the lines that we drew. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and bring in my rotating mat. This is my preferred way of doing trimming on any kind of these units. If they're small enough to fit on here, I always use them on this rotating mat. So the first thing we're going to do is take out the pins. And if you peel it back, this is the crazy unit we're going to get. I'm going to take it to the iron. I'm going to press this flat, and that will serve to set my seams, and we'll come back and we'll cut it open. Okay, she's all pressed out. I'm going to go ahead and cut these pieces apart. Just right down the center. There we are. Now we have 2 of these odd pieces that we're going to work with. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to snip that seam. You're going to want to snip on the sky side. So let me get my scissors. And it's just the littlest snip right here. Don't cut your stitch line, and we'll cut this one too. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to take it over and press it open. And then because we've snipped that little seam, what we're going to do is press like this. One way and one the other way. Or open. I'll leave that up to you. I'm just going to press them going in opposite directions. Hold on, I'll be right back. Okay, it's all pressed. I've pressed them going opposite ways. And now we're ready to actually reveal our shape. And that's where the ruler comes in. And what we're going to do is lay it on the shape. And you want to line up this dotted line to the tip top of your goose, and there's your 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then you want to line up these diagonals to the edge of the goose, and you might have to just sort of monkey it around a little bit just to get it right. Okay, and then what I recommend for your first cut is to separate the pieces. So once you have it lined up, come in and put 3 fingers straight down, hold in place, and trim apart. And just take the other one completely off the cutting surface. Hold it. trim on all four sides. Okay, and there's your goose. Isn't that beautiful? So you can see the difference between the trimmed and the untrimmed. So, you're losing, this much fabric. I mean, I don't think that's the end of the world in terms of trimming. You're also losing maybe a ½ an inch worth of fabric in the seam allowances. But again, to me, that is a small price to pay for an accurate unit, because I think these are, I don't know what the terminology is, they're deceptively difficult, because you think it's going to be really easy. It looks like nothing, right? But they're a lot trickier than you think. So again, I've got everything lined up, and you're making sure to have your line follow right off the corner. You want the corner of the ruler to be at the corner or the intersection of the two fabrics on both sides. And then you want to have this 1/4 inch seam right at the tip top of your goose, because that's your seam allowance. All right, and then just hold down with 3 fingers. You're pressing down, and I always find it easiest to trim my top first. Rotate, come down and hold. And we're going to rotate. I apologize for my phone ringing. We'll do the reveal when the phone is done. Okay, it's done. Everything is trimmed, and then you pull this away, and there's your beautiful flying goose. So you've got those two, and then remember, we still have this one. So once we trim this, that will give us 2 more. So that will be our 4 units. So, they start like this. Make sure you can see that. They start out like this, and then they're going to give you these 2. So that's how I've been doing them. You can see that if you make the smaller ones, like we're not gonna trim down our beautiful unit, but if you were making the smaller ones, or I don't know, maybe you have leftovers of these and you're doing another project and you feel like you can use them, but you need them smaller, you could always use the small end to, or the small portion to trim it down even more. And that's today's video. I hope that helps you to make better flying geese in your own quilting at home. And if you have any questions, drop them below. I want to let you know that I also have a written tutorial that appears on my website. I will link to that in the description below. And I think that's all I have for you today. So until the next video, happy quilting, my friends.